Hello, Tim.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Oh, I can hear you even better now, actually. So, how are you? It's been a while.
It has been a while. Thank you for joining me here. Okay, great. So please introduce yourself so everybody else knows who you are.
Right, so I'm Jeremy Blain. I'm the CEO of Performance Works International, which is a company that looks at transformational space that leaders, organizations, and teams are operating in right now. So, pretty unpredictable, fairly uncertain, and a requirement to boost the way that we work, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that we apply. I'm also the executive director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, which aims to accelerate that I just said. And I've just started a social enterprise called Diverse IT Talent, which looks at untapped talent pools and how we bring them into modern business and technology careers earlier in the cycle, but also reskill those, people like aging population in our workforces. So I'm focused on quite a bit.
Okay, so we're going to fire through
Yeah.
this like a machine gun. Okay, so what are the most significant challenges you face in transforming workplace culture and leadership within your organization or those of your clients?
Everywhere, including my own organization and organizations I've worked for, it's mindset. If you're not bought into what the transformation means and what it means for me and what it means for others and how I need to adapt to that, then people by very nature won't change. And then potentially, even if they do put some actions in place, we risk failure through not building momentum and then going back to what we do. So mindset is absolutely critical. So we've got to activate that transformational leadership mindset first before we can even go into, so here's the plan or the checklist, if you like, for action.
Awesome, awesome. Could you describe a recent situation where you felt, or more accurately, where you felt that your leadership team or the leadership team of clients could have benefited from additional training or guidance in culture building, leadership, or both?
Yeah, well, always, because of the pace of change right now, is that everything within our organizations is evolving at a rate that we've not seen before, and it's catching people out, whether they're leaders, whether they're human capital professionals, whether they're employees, and we're all expecting different things, but spaces are moving quicker, and even quicker since the pandemic, actually, because now we have normed out hybrid working, and that is now putting pressure on how we do things and how we build culture, for example, within a world where I'm remote from other people or my central location. The problem that seems to be happening around that is that hasn't been embraced as a formal policy must do for organizations to think about culture building in this new world that we are, because also with the advent of AI and with the increasing application of digital, it's going to become even more important to protect the human touch, and that's bound together with culture.
Couldn't agree more. That's something I'm hearing a lot because a lot of people are marketing themselves suddenly as AI experts, and some of them are at least using it in a way which makes them worth paying attention to. But the recurring theme I hear is AI tool, human touch must. That it's
That's
not
right.
one or the other. Yeah.
Well, it's in some ways AI and a lot of the other digital transformations there enable the human touch. So we
Yes.
should see these technologies and these evolutions as something whereby actually we can spend more time doing the things that we need to do with customers on a human level, with our colleagues in collaborative formats, and with
Mhm.
our partners, so that we can have more meaningful conversations and make more meaningful experiences for those that we're serving in the communities or in our businesses.
Right. Yeah. The human, the robots or their digital minds should be serving us. They might not like that though. We'll see whether it goes Terminator way. So the next question is, what special outcomes would you hope to achieve through training in leadership and culture building?
um when it boils down to it, it's simple things like the mindset shift I talked about before, but then the behavioral change that means that we can make progress. So the behavioral change, again, in it's funny to say it, but with the rate of digital transformation, we're in a very human-centered age in leadership and management terms, because it's what employees and what we all want. We need to feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit safer in what we're doing, in while we're staring at the future, which is increasingly uncertain. So the behavioral change is key, but what for me is more central than that, and if I look upwards in the organization, because employees are pretty good these days, particularly when we're considering digital. They're very competent, or they're very much more competent at driving their own learning. Where I'm seeing the need here is to build skills, and the knowledge that goes behind it, is at the leadership suites and senior management. By the steep learning curve that they're required to go on now, is something that many leaders just aren't appreciating or are not willing to go on. It is only the enlightened leaders that are, and they're the ones who are going to have competitive advantage. But embracing a steeper learning curve right now to build knowledge and skills, as well as enhancing those behaviors that I talked about, is a must do, not a nice to do.
Yeah, you're good at this. I think you've done this before. For some context for anybody watching this, I have been a guest on, sorry, I blanked on your name. It's not on the screen. Jeremy. I'm sorry, Jeremy. It has been a long time, but I was a guest on Jeremy's show a while ago, and he's also an awesome interviewer. I hope I can live up to at least something resembling his hosting skills. So in your opinion, what are the key skills and competencies that leaders should possess in creating a thriving organizational culture?
Mm-hmm. I did a piece of research at the beginning of this year, called the Transformational Leadership Survey, very creatively named, and we uncovered the top skill sets that are there. And it won't surprise you to hear that the human-centered sets of building empathy, better skills in collaboration at all levels, better empowerment of the organization, the practice of horizontal leadership, and flattening structures, which are really big shifts in leadership terms, are the things that are going to have the biggest difference from a human-centered perspective. But as I just said, one of the greatest needs is to build those digital skills. And I don't just mean using this bit of technology here. How do I really use Salesforce or my financial systems or HR systems? It's about digital ways of working. How do I model it? How do I make better decisions through data analytics and data science? And how do we work in more agile ways, embracing what we've learned from the technology sector, like design thinking, which is in itself a very empowering process to allow for any level to take ownership of work, of problem solving, of ideas generation, of innovation, to really spread the growth need across the organization at all levels. So these digital skill sets are really important. And as you referred to before, rather than jumping on the bandwagon and saying, right, we need AI somehow, is to really understand it and understand the broader applications and the risks of it. And on top of that, what are the skill sets I need to now be more cyber secure as an organization, as a leader? How do I minimize those risks across my organization while I'm empowering the teams? How do we protect our customers' trust? All of those kind of things. These are skill sets for the modern age.
Excellent. Okay, so the next one, what do you think is the ideal duration of for a comprehensive course on transforming workplace culture, leadership, or both?
There is no ideal. It depends very much on the organization and the level that they're at to start with. So, for example, in digital terms, an easier one for me to come to is, what is the digital maturity of the organization, and therefore what is the level of immersion that they need in the learning journey, and probably the duration of that too. So it's very immature organization and they're struggling with transformation. The immersion needs to be a constant. Almost, if you think about it just as a business year, it needs to be month on month, whereby for more mature organizations or individuals at any levels, really, then it can be more ad hoc. It can be blended, which it should be as well, using the ability to drive knowledge first through means of self-driven learning or virtual classes. And then any time that we have face-to-face or as a group on group projects, applying what we've learned so that it can be action based and we can start to work on the specific skills improvement, which we're not doing enough of. So formal learning like that can come in many forms. But I think the biggest learning benefit that can happen is recreating a coaching culture in many of our organizations. So managers and leaders who have now, from what I said before, flattened the organization can move away from performance supervision and into performance support. So that on the job learning becomes more relevant, more appropriate, and more powerful probably than any other learning. And that's where we have a gap.
I like that. The book that always comes to mind when I think of organizations, and it's being borne out, like with what you were talking about, the survey, it seems to have come to similar conclusions. Daniel Pink did a book years ago called Drive, and it was sort of like the science that we know about what motivates people in organizations versus what's being practiced. And it came down to mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Mastery, the ability to improve, which is obviously related to training. Autonomy, saying, look, you know what you're doing. We're here to help if you need it. Otherwise, just go do your work. We're good. And purpose, that is that what you do matters something beyond the paycheck, that you really feel like it. And unfortunately, people are sort of abusing the purpose side of things, where it's like, I'm here to serve, buy my crap. It's like, that isn't what we mean by purpose and serving. It should serve and not defined by you, the person selling or giving that thing, but the person receiving it or the community receiving it. When they say it's service, then it's service. That's not for us to decide. That's for us to learn from them. So I really like that. By the way, you were talking about that survey. Is that available, or is that
It is.
top secret? Can you please share links with
it's available, very much available. It is at website www.tlai.org. And that is the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute. So the tlai.org, where you can download that research for free, but also download more information from what you're just talking about there, Tim, around appropriate learning journeys based on where you are now and where you want to be in X time period.
Thank you. I want that for my own selfish purposes, but at the same time, I'm delighted it's available to everybody because I'm all about the learning. Okay, so next one. What factors would influence your decision? And this is talking about the above, right? So that ideal duration or frequency for that comprehensive learning. And can I try to interpret something and make sure I understand it correctly? So are you saying in terms of that duration, the duration is ongoing or perpetual?
Well, it depends. The answer to the question is something I started with the last time, which is the maturity level of the organization. So where they are now, so the maturity level drives the duration. Less mature, greater duration. More mature, more bite size. Shorter duration learning, but also the attitude has to be there. So the will to want to learn, and then the will to immerse yourself in the learning and apply your learning and then learn from it, also has to be in place. So it comes back to the mindset first again, but also then the status of where you are now, where you need to be.
I love that. Growth mindset. And yeah, if the culture isn't in place, that sort of learning is cool, or learning is, as you said, a must, not a would be nice. The company is screwed if they're not willing to do that, especially, as you said, in a world that is as dynamic as it has become since ChatGPT. It's added, like I'm trying to think of the word for it, an order of magnitude more, like a 10x on business change. That one thing where we went from AI that sucked, let's be honest, because AI before ChatGPT, it was like, this can't even convince me when I'm drunk. I don't drink, by the way, or very little. This couldn't convince me if I was like smashed out of my skull that I'm talking to a human to something
Yeah.
which is more articulate than most people. Next one, what formats or delivery methods do you think would be most effective considering your schedule? I already know what your answer is probably going to be from what you said, but I'm going to ask the question in case you have extra insights to sort of crystallize this. So let me try again. What formats or delivery methods would be most effective considering your schedule and learning preferences?
That would be the blended learning. So you would put a learning journey together in an ideal world, which is suited to all individuals' learning styles. So
Mm-hmm.
people that prefer a little more analytics and reflection and the academics behind it, then you'd give more time, you'd give more details, you'd give more self-paced time as well. And then those that also thrive on the human touch, you would want to engage them in the journey. It says you therefore are responsible to build some of the journey with the not on the knowledge side through some of the virtual classes and the self-paced learning, but then we will come together so that we can share and we can all share together what we're doing. So I hear this all the time that there is still no substitution for the human touch, but learning can be so much more efficient now if we just embrace what we did post or during the pandemic around remote working. It's just kind of hybrid learning, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
and then finding what suits us. So you can have you can have parallel tracks. You can have one that I'm driving, and then I can live my preferences. And then there's one with the organization where I can feed in my preferences and collaborate more closely with HR or learning and development to create learning paths or journeys that are more suitable to everybody in the organization, including myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when I still teach English. I actually teach it through an app, and it's really good because it's autonomous one-to-one. I, as the teacher, can determine the direction of the class. But one of the primary things I say, look, this is your lesson. This is all about you. We're not going to talk about, this is for English, right? So we're not going to talk about grammar. We're not going to talk about this and that. We're going to talk about what you're interested and those topics that you already engaged and care about and invested in will be the topics. And then after a few classes, I go like, how am I doing? What are you liking? Do you have feedback? Is there anything you need me to change? I can always make recommendations because that's what my expertise is. However, it's sort of like, what do you love? What do you hate? What needs to change? What would you like? What suggestions do you have? And most of the time they say everything's fine, which is great because I think I just give them the message continuously that this is your party. I'm the facilitator. Let's make this happen. So next one is when it comes to investing in leadership and culture development, what criteria do you consider when determining the value of a course?
I have a big problem in our industry around those organizations that say they're learning and development organizations that are very big, that constantly repackage what they have to look very shiny, but ultimately it's the same kind of programs, be it leadership development, management, team development, so-called soft skills development, which in my world doesn't really exist. These are powerful core skills that we need to have: the communication, the negotiation, the collaboration, all of these kind of things. So I have a real problem in our industry because I don't think we're doing justice to our customers enough. So this refers back to, and I can evidence my claim to be championing this because I live and breathe that belief. So that research that I talked about before leads to me annually, and I'm just a small company, updating all of my content with the latest case studies, new learnings from that year that has gone, because the pace of change is so fast. So the pace of change is so much, the pace of challenges is so great, the pace of learning has to keep up with that. So for me, the value comes from learning that is grounded in today and tomorrow, not what we
Mm-hmm.
used to do and how we just repackaged it and maybe put a module in about hybrid, but actually how we fundamentally reimagine what learning can be.
Yeah. Dogma bad. It was funny what you're saying because it's sort of what I do when my biggest struggle in sort of building my consultancy has been, well, what do you do? It's like, well, I could offer you some cookie cutter answer to that, but until we have the conversation, what I can do for you doesn't exist yet, because it is always, to use the British term, bespoke, or to use a more American or Canadian, North American term, tailor-made. It's like, if I have a ready to do stamped out course, I think there's a problem with that. And I'm a teacher, like, there's a framework, but every individual student is doing something entirely different and at their level. So what the fantastically good speaker or the fantastically good leader already does, I'm not helping them at the same level as I'm helping somebody else who's a new employee who can barely make their own decisions, and they're afraid to direct somebody else who is now junior to them. So it's an oxymoron to say we have a course that covers it all. You're either oblivious or you're lying and you know it, because it has to be built to the needs of that particular individual in that organization. So I'm on the same bandwagon. So, it's pretty obvious. And, 17 years of teaching, I can say from direct experience, that's the way it really works. Cookie cutter has never really worked. It's just we accepted it for some odd reason. So the next one is, can you share your thoughts on this is asked and answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway, frequency of coaching, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, that would align best with the needs of you and your clients? You can say asked and answered, because as far as I'm concerned, it's already been done.
On demand, elective, or optional. It's down to the individual and their organization. So it shouldn't have a set period. Coaching can be an everyday, unremitting process, and is something that many organizations and leaders and managers have lost the art of doing and art of conducting, but can be the most powerful for on-the-job implementation, on-the-job skills building, and therefore for me it's a constant. Therefore, making that you ask for it when you need it. It's on demand. It shouldn't say, right, you're going to have 2 coaching sessions and that's it, and there's the prep.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. What types of ongoing, on-demand support or mentorship would be most beneficial?
Well, that's one, coaching, and also mentorship as well, and being able to some more, again, enlightened organizations also, when we talk about mentorship, practice reverse mentorship. So they might bring smart young Gen Z or millennial individuals into the boardroom or the C-suites to help them understand digital ways of working and why it can aid collaboration, break down barriers, and help everybody contribute to the growth of the organization strategically as much as operationally. And on the other way, then there's a mutual benefit from a mentoring point of view, also from a coaching perspective, by creating these kind of relationships. So those 2, I think, are the most powerful and the most needed.
So ideally, and I emphasize the ideally, how often should that be available? Again, we're kind of repeating ourselves, but.
And I'm going to repeat myself again. It
Please
should be
do.
on demand, elective, or optional.
Excellent. And now let's sort of flip this script a little bit, because this came up in one of the other interviews. I already know your answer. I'm going to ask it. Realistically, how often would it be practical and sustainable to do so? That is, because on demand all the time is, especially if you're talking about live mentors who obviously are maybe higher in the organization and have their own schedules to be concerned with. So that's the context in which I'm asking this question.
Yeah, I know. And it's not going to be all the time, because I've got my day job to do as well. But it is based on the need, the time of need, and the speed of learning need. So, or help need, whatever, assistance, support, whatever that is. So yes, I refer you to the answers that I gave some time ago as well.
Yes.
Just answered it in a slightly different way for that one.
Right. Respect. Because I mean, that's the thing, right? Is this interview, like all others I've done, whether the cookie cutter question is even relevant anymore or already asked and answered, depends on what you've already said. And my questions can't anticipate that. They are not AI dynamic questions. Okay. So I don't even want to ask you the last 2, but I will anyway. You can just say answer.
This is what I love, that I've been answering your questions before you've even asked them to me. It's like,
It's
tell me an
awesome.
AI that could do that.
That's right. So how do you envision the courses that we've described, helping you address specific cultural or leadership challenges within your organization or those of your clients?
Well, yeah, this is a more holistic view into learning, whatever the learning is. All learning now, and all leadership and management activity should be focused on culture building as much as anything else, because if you do that and you can create a psychologically safe foundation which underpins all of these things that you're doing, whether it's strategy implementation, whether it's learning, whether it's support, whether it's coaching, mentoring, then you're on a much more solid base. The problem is coming in many organizations where culture is not being built. Leaders are as stressed as employees, even competent leaders, because they're just not able to keep up with what's going. So you not only get a stagnation of organizational and individual learning because we're just too busy, but therefore that puts in jeopardy the cultural plays that we really need as this transformational era continues.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked that question because you filled it in and fleshed it out really well. And you hit one of my favorite words in the world. I discovered it in the classroom, but then Carol Dweck, or was it Amy Edmondson, specifically talked about it. Psychological safety, growth mindset,
Yeah.
grit, these things. So, Angela Duckworth is grit. Growth mindset is Carol Dweck, and psychological safety is Amy Edmondson. That all these things I saw in the classroom or empirically derived from being in the classroom and seeing what actually worked for students. Feeling safe to make mistakes is so important, even like to a whole new level in Japan, because in Japan they have a saying which is those who stand the nail that stands out gets pounded down. So it's so much about consensus and hierarchy in one sense, but not in another. They got this thing called nimawashi, trimming around the roots of the bonsai tree, that you basically have to get everybody else's permission to find out what you think, and to get them to say, well, we can't do that here. Mistakes are desirable, they're normal, and in fact, they help us all learn. To get somebody to stand out by speaking first. You can build psychological safety, growth mindset, and grit into these classrooms. But I do it first. My first day is nothing but culture building. I prove how incompetent I am at Japanese and how totally okay with that I am. That is, I don't know everything. Neither do you, and that's totally okay. And after the first class or a few classes, we're laughing at mistakes together. That is, we're laughing with each other, not at anyone. And then it's like, okay, now it's safe. You can read the room. It's like, okay, now we can really begin to do learning where everybody likes coming to this class because it's just being yourself. Okay, last question, and that is second last, actually, but considering the potential impact on your organization. What pricing model, one time, monthly subscription, blah, 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 would you find the most appealing for the training that we've described?
This is a good question in the current context, because in professional services, whether it's learning and development or law or finance or other realms of consulting, there are different models emerging, whether that's a set fee underneath a bronze, silver and gold. Let's say you invest this much, you get X. If you invest this much more, you get X plus, and X plus plus is a model that some are buying into now. My personal experience is that the per diem rate is on its way out, and it's more a value-based rate which is coming into it, which might then include not just the learning that I'm doing, but immersing myself more into the business to work with individual leaders as a coach before and afterwards, or to learn more about their business so that I can actually talk their language, not my language of what my course tells me to say, but the language of my customer. And that can really drive increased value from a learning output perspective, and also sort of in the actionable areas of where I, as a consultant, can contribute also as an outsider to the business thinking, either strategically or operationally in terms of implementation.
Okay, so I want to understand what you mean by value-based rate. Before I ask you the question, though, by value-based rate, would you equate that with performance-based pricing, or is it something different?
That has been tried in our industry, which is sort of learning and development, but it's very hard to prove. So if after a course suddenly the business jumps by 30% and I'm the trainer on a bonus saying, oh well, that's all me because they just went on a course with me, it's nonsense, absolute nonsense. Yeah, there might be a contribution to it, but it's lots of different factors. The change in mindset and behavior, how the line managers are, what's happening in the rest of the organization. So I don't think that can be there. Therefore, my value-based approach, as I'm talking about, is for me to be much more invested in their business so they can feel freer and more secure and happier to invest in me in theirs.
Okay, so then it's absolutely not performance-based pricing. So I've never heard value-based rate. I can guess, but I'm not really certain what you mean by that. Can you tell me what you mean by value-based rate?
Yeah, that's the amount I'm doing per buck spent, if you like, to bring
Okay.
it down right down to its bare bones. So if you hire me as a trainer, let's say, I don't know, for presentation skills, let's say, and it's half a day. Okay, my day rate is X. So I'm going to charge you that and maybe a little bit of preparation if we're doing it. But what I'm saying is that I would probably charge you higher than that. I'll charge you this, but here's what else comes with me doing that. So, for example, I will observe 2 or 3 presentations of those either coming into the class or of the organization and see where the kind of the bench is. We can do some assessment up front. We can do some interviews with people who are coming onto the course to provide some real-time feedback. Post course, I can be as coach to help them prepare their next presentation and deliver it with impact, passion, and engagement so that there are real measurables. So the overall value delivery of what I'm doing is not just an evaluation that says I really enjoyed that course. I enjoyed that course. I got so much out of it, and I absolutely nailed that. And we brought in X, Y, or Z. That is the
Right.
value-based approach.
So it's based on their assessment of the value they got from the course.
More collaboratively than that, and it's
Okay.
easier for those customers that you might work with time and time again. And then there is a bit of trust and faith that comes into if it's a new customer from both sides. Let's try and work with each other. It might not be at the highest level yet, but let me prove that I can add the value. But you also have to recognize that I'm going to make some extra effort here as well. So I'm not going to discount this price. I'm not going to go here.
Right.
And you got to believe in the value that you do, much like they would believe with their customers that they can offer value, and their new customers that they will deliver their promises.
I'm really interested in that pricing model. I want to learn more about it. So the final one is, who do you know who could benefit or would be willing to interview with myself for this very interview, whose questions are, as much as I'm going to do it, try to make them dynamic to what's already been said, but be brave enough to ask the same question because it was really beneficial, especially for this last one.
I would say one of the partners I work with, because he operates from Bangkok, so he's in your region, so he gets very much operates there from within this industry. So he's on LinkedIn. He's a qualified high-end coach. He does a lot around transformational leadership too, and he has a really good eye across the globe and particularly in Asia. Totally is. You're absolutely right there. But thank you very much for having me. Anyway, Tim, I've got
Thank you
to go
so
in a minute
much.
anyway.
It's been a
Yes,
delight. I know
absolutely.
you
But
do.
yeah, keep me posted.
I will. I will. Take care. Bye,
Yeah,
Jeremy.
take it easy. Enjoy your next ones. I'll connect you with Paul.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bye, Jeremy. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'd look at it completely the other way around, actually. And I get what you're saying, but actually it's gives you a much greater opportunity to sell if you have little 30-second bites or 1 minute bites out of the interview that you then share on social media before you launch the actual episode, that said the whole thing is coming, but here's some short bites that go into it talking about X, Y, or Z. And then you can then choose, say, look, I'm going to launch it in two halves, let's say, maybe, or even at the same time. But it gives you a great opportunity, I think, and it's something that I don't do myself because I just don't have time. And I got so much, as you know, with the podcast that I did and the podcast that I did with you particularly, there's so much gold in there that I could see that there's 8 or 9 brilliant little sound bites that I could come out and do a post
Mhm.
on. I say, here's what Tim says about X. The full interview is here, so you can keep selling it if you like,
I
and you
love
can
that.
attract different people in different ways.